Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are reviewing M. Night Shyamalan's new film Trap, which stars Josh Hartnett and Salika Shyamalan. It is a thriller about a serial killer who takes his daughter to a music concert, where unbeknownst to him, this music concert is basically being used as bait by the FBI and the authorities to catch this killer, who is known under the alias of the Butcher to the general public. And I am going to cut right to the chase with this one, guys. Trap is absolutely one of the worst films I've seen this year. Not only does it stray away from the central interesting premise it sets up in the second half of the film, it is stupidly written, relying on a suspension of disbelief rather than intelligent, smart choices by the characters. It has no tonal consistency in knowing what it wants to be. Some of the performances are really off. The film does not know what character it wants to focus on. And the result is a messy, senseless, and honestly lazy execution of what could have been a really interesting premise. The idea of a serial killer who indulges his worst impulses while also trying to maintain a wholesome domestic family life is interesting enough. The idea of a serial killer taking his daughter to a music concert that is being used as a stage to trap him, very, very compelling. I was really hooked from the trailer. I was slightly alarmed that they revealed that he is the serial killer, and honestly I think the film reveals that way too early as well, but that's okay because you're then engaged in the tension of the escape and planning the escape while also trying to maintain this fatherly supportive facade for his daughter. But the film and the script has no idea how to juggle those ideas, like none whatsoever. Being a serial killer who's successfully evaded the authorities thus far, I was expecting a really smart and slickly directed thriller, whereby he uses some very genius and creative techniques to evade capture. Ultimately, what we got was very convenient situations whereby he easily just brushes past things. Apparently everyone at the concert, all their vendors are in on this plan. They've all got a code word that they can communicate with each other. One of these workers, after a very quick bonding scene with our main protagonist, just tells him everything, tells him the code word, and later on just invites him backstage to go and get this t-shirt from the storerooms, in a scenario where you are supposed to be on insane level lockdown. Why in God's name are you doing that? To me, that was the first red flag in a script full of them, that this was not going to be a film that relied on intelligent and creative choices, but rather the easiest, most convenient, most tensionless excuses to get out of situations. There were a couple of glimmers of the moments that could have been exploited more, where we get to see a sense of the real savageness that this character possesses, you know, pushing a drunk woman down the stairs to cause distraction, causing a grease fryer to blow up in a woman's face to also cause a distraction. These were good moments that elevated the darkness of the character, really drew out the conflict in you as an audience member of whether you want to root for this guy or whether you want him to get caught, and capitalized on that compelling premise. Those moments were so few and far between in this film, but they should have been jam-packed full of them. It's also very hard to engage with this situation because there is no build-up. There was such a rush set up between this central relationship of father and daughter, and there's no real bonding time to get you invested in their relationship and the conflict of him being a good father versus him being this absolute wanted maniac. So there was no emotional connection there for me. Perhaps the cardinal sin that this film commits is we then leave the stadium and the concert. The entire trailer makes it feel like this film is going to be a claustrophobic, tense, escape room-esque thriller. However, that is just half of the film. The second half moves out of this location, and in doing so it loses the stakes, it loses any kind of immersion of the setup you've invested in so far, and it really offers you nothing to justify leaving that location in the first place. But not only does it move location, it shifts the character focus onto M. Night Shyamalan's daughter, who plays this pop star Lady Raven, and she suddenly and rather laughably becomes a central character in the film, presented as the hero and the person who's going to be the foil to the antagonist. But it's almost like everyone involved at a creative level with this film does not understand why the Butcher is such a compelling protagonist. It's because he's not an antagonist in this film. we are seeing him through a main character lens. It's about him trying to get away with things rather than other people trying to bring him down. And there is a clear difference. Although you've got both aspects operating in this film, the uniqueness of the film, the distinctness of the premise, and what makes it a compelling watch is that you are so conflicted watching it because you're watching it through his lens. The second half of this film shifts entirely. He is the villain. You want him to go down. You're rooting for the other characters to stop him. And I think that's partly why it fails at such a fundamental level. It no longer wants you to see this guy as the main character, as your emotional core. He is now the villain of the film in the second half. And it is just so much less interesting because of it. So I don't think the issue is necessarily that Lady Raven becomes a main character in the film. It's that she becomes a main character at the expense of our actual main character. And it derails the film. The film relies on you as a viewer overlooking so many flaws in the common sense of the film's logic. And inconsistencies as well. There is a moment where the character is in his own house. He's been outed to his family because of this pop star Lady Raven. So he locks them in his daughter's bedroom, and he then holds the pop star hostage as he goes to leave and flee and go into hiding or whatever. As the garage doors lift up, his family are there, they're blocking his path, and he actually says this out loud. He says something along the lines of, how did they get out? They must have gone through the window in my daughter's bedroom. Never mix my two lifestyles. He's never considered it as an escape route. Badly trying to articulate the fact that when he's a family man, his serial killer impulses are submerged. He doesn't see the house as this kind of place that he needs escape plans for. All the while, this man has a literal tunnel built into his house that he can get out through. Where is the logic? Where is the consistency? Where is just the general basic level of intelligence in the writing? That was the final straw for me. I just thought it was such a stupid film. Musically, this film is basically the Lady Raven concert, and that's supposed to provide, you know, the backdrop. I think the songs were supposed to kind of complement the mood of the scenes. I couldn't really pay attention to the music because the scenes we were watching were just so bad. Cinematography, there's nothing special happening here. Same with the editing. Nothing really stands out for creating that tension-fueled atmosphere or that claustrophobic feeling. I think if we're talking performances, obviously the film hangs entirely on Josh Hartnett and his ability to juggle this brutal murderer act with his caring, genuine, innocent father act. And it takes him a while to kind of strike that balance. I didn't find him completely convincing and engrossing at first, but that was probably the only redeeming quality of the second half of the film, when he didn't have to pretend anymore and he could just kind of embrace that starkness and that side of him. His performance did get to flourish, whereas I think when he was trying to kind of balance it and kind of turn one side on and one side off at times, it was a bit difficult. I think the scene where he outs himself to Lady Raven is quite good. There's a scene where he confronts his wife at the end, which is kind of a stupid reveal, but the acting in that scene is good. The standoff is quite good and really well performed. You know, the flaws of the script are not the flaws of the performance. They do a really good job at conveying the emotion. Occasionally he's very camp, and it's like the film's trying to play it for laughs rather than sincere, sinister attitudes. And again, it can't quite get that balance right of what it wants to be and how it wants to keep it consistent. It just didn't feel like it was thought through. It was such a great conceptual idea that had no follow through in the execution, and I was so disappointed in it. But if you have seen this film, guys, do drop a comment below. I would love to compare notes and hear your thoughts. Please also consider liking and subscribing to the channel. That is always a huge help for me. And in the meantime, we'll see you for the next vid.